And we're joined now by David Graham, who is at the gathering in Champlain. You are a French professor at Clinton Community College.
Yes, I am.
It is great to see you again. Welcome.
Same here, Tom. Thanks. I'm really glad you invited me to come.
This is quite a summer of celebrations for our friends in Canada. We just saw Montreal is celebrating its 375th anniversary this year in grand style. And this weekend, the entire country is celebrating Canada Day on Saturday. And this year is a milestone. Canada is turning 150.
150 years old this year.
The celebration is not only obviously for French Canadians, but also English Canadians like yourself taking part in the celebration.
Right. That's true. Although many people around here know me if they receive an email from me as Mr. Quebec. The unknown fact that I have to reveal today is that, in fact, my ancestors were Anglophones from the city of Coaticook, Quebec, the milk capital of Quebec, and the city of Compton, Quebec, right next door. And what I wanted to do for Canada Day is shed a little bit of light on Canadian history, how events in Quebec kind of played major roles throughout Canadian history.
So on Canada Day, you're giving a presentation, the role of Quebec in Canadian history, and that's happening at the Champlain Wine Company, downtown Plattsburgh.
Right. 5:30 on July 1st, right before the Don Taylor Watson concert, which is going to be held right next door, actually.
And you'll be talking about how really Canadian history is Quebec history, because the first settlements in Canada were in Quebec. Is there a good estimate how many people living on this side of the border in northern New York and Vermont and New England are descendants of French and French Canadians?
Well, one of the problems we have now is that there's no ethnic identity in the census anymore. And as near as I can remember, I believe the last time that was included on census figures was in 1980. When I looked at the 1980 census, it said 20% French and 13% French Canadian. But the thing you need to remember about the census is the census taker walked in and asked you what you were. So that maybe if you'd been discriminated against, or if you'd been given a hard time, maybe the thing to do was to say, well, I'm American now, I'm not French Canadian anymore. Yeah. And that was the safest way for them to protect themselves from the discrimination and the persecution that they suffered as immigrants.
What would be your best guess? A quarter of the population maybe has ties?
I'm not going to mention any names, but someone I know who is very familiar with the genealogy of the area estimates that anywhere between 40 and 50% of the people in this area have French Canadian background.
Are there a number of families that have lost connection with their ties? They're either unaware of their genealogy, or
well, the thing is, I find that a lot, but I have to ask. I think it's not that they've lost it; it's just that they have forgotten about it. They know about it. Very often I say, do you have French in your family? And the answer is, yeah. Well, I think so. And so part of this campaign, I guess you want to say, that I'm on, is to say, there are a lot of places in New England where people of French Canadian heritage are honored, and there are workshops and poetry recitations. I went to one not long ago in Maine, where they had 5 different authors come in, and they wrote about their experience. My impression here is that the French Canadians were so busy working hard that they didn't have time to write things down or write stories and create literature. But the one thing they were able to do is they were able to rise in society from what they had been to what they are now. One of the things I would like to publicize, and I've already talking to a couple of people about that, we have a community where there are some Franco-Americans who have been very, very, very successful. Okay, there's David Favreau, who's our sheriff. There's Desmond Rosico, who was our police chief. There's Bernie Bassett, who is really Bernie Bassett. There's my friend Steve Frederick at Clinton Community College, whose family is the Menard family. So we have some, and we have Alan Racine, who's been successful in banker. And let's not forget the grande dame of Quebec heritage here in the North Country. That's Celine Paquette, who I better make sure I mention Celine's name because she's a friend. And then there's Rick Lauren, who is really the one of the moving forces in maintaining his French heritage, and who has gotten me involved too.
And we met Rick at that gathering in Champlain a few months back, and that is a family where they're really holding on to and embracing their heritage. Now, Rick and his family, since that gathering in Champlain, held an event at their house and invited a lot of people together.
Right.
And again, celebrating their French heritage, oftentimes that's done through food.
Oh, you bet. In my long career here as a professor of French at Clinton Community College, when I ask students about their background, they might know that Grandma spoke French. They might know that my uncle came from Trois-Rivières. They might know that there's a Landry in my family somewhere who was part of the Acadian diaspora. But the one thing that's constant through all of this is if you've got French heritage, you know something about your food. Starting with poutine, which is the common denominator.
Right.
But the one thing of Quebec food that remains in many households is the meat pie, the tradition of the meat pie, both at Christmas time and at New Year's, and the visit to the sugar shack, the cabane à sucre in the springtime, and especially to the cabane à sucre at the Easter time.
And the use of maple syrup in many of their recipes. And for Rick and for the Laurens, he's lost a bit of the language. They've lost maybe some of the songs and other things like that. But when it comes to food, they still make it the way that they did generations ago.
Now, Rick has lost the language, but his father still speaks it.
You really do what you can to encourage students at Clinton Community College and really people in the community to look into their genealogy, to look at their lineage and see if there's a connection across the border.
And it's sometimes honestly it's pretty frustrating because looking into genealogy maybe is not so popular as it used to be, but in order to figure out where you are, you have to look at where you came from. And the stories that you find looking back in your genealogy are the stories of your family's life.
So along with helping people trace their roots, you're also part of another project now, including a grant that you've received from the Lake Champlain Basin Program.
We got $5,000 from the Lake Champlain Basin Program to teach Franco-American and French-Canadian history through song. The name of it's from warfare to workplace. Songs of warfare, songs of the workplace, and virtually anything about the experience in between, the immigrant experience, crossing the border, working in a factory, and establishing or losing your identity. Because one of the songs of our friend Joseph Vachon says, c'est par l'assimilation qu'on trouve les avantages. It's by assimilation into society that we get our advantages. And so that theme of assimilation, loss of family name, loss of family identity is key to the whole experience in the project. And that's why it's specifically pertinent here to the North Country, because so many people came across like that. And what we've done is taken songs from France that were sung in the United States by the very first travelers that came here, songs that were created in Quebec for all occasions, songs that were brought across the border by immigrants. And that's where José Vachon comes in. Many of her songs deal with the French-Canadian immigrant experience. And the other thing we did is took some of popular songs of Quebec music from the beginning days up until today that deal with our theme of from warfare to workplace. And so we have songs about war, we have songs about Quebec traditions, and we have some songs about the workplace too. And what we're trying to do now is coordinate a student concert with José Vachon at the commemoration of the Daughters of the American Revolution at Fort Chambly in and around the 1st of June in 2018.